Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the absolutely unprecedented transition of power in West Bengal following the 2026 elections. And let me tell you, this is a transition where the final vote count, it's really just the very beginning of the story. We're looking at a situation that completely challenges our fundamental understanding of electoral certainty.
Right, let's look at the numbers. We saw a massive shift in power, with the BJP securing 207 seats to the TMC's 80. Now, on the surface, that looks like a blowout, right? It seems like a completely settled, sweeping mandate. The math looks rock solid. When one party grabs more than double the seats of its main rival, the narrative basically writes itself. The state preps for a new government, the machinery moves forward, and that's usually the end of it. But when you look just a little bit closer at the underlying data, a really fascinating, deeply complex complication starts to emerge.
Because what happens when the margin of victory is actually smaller than the number of deleted voters? Yeah, you heard that right. This specific mathematical anomaly has shifted the battleground away from the ballot box and sent it straight to the Supreme Court. We are literally watching an extraordinary scenario unfold, a massive administrative handover happening at the exact same time as a huge judicial dispute over who actually had the right to vote in the first place.
Okay, let's establish the facts. Section 1. The 2026 election tally.
Taking a look at this baseline reality, we've got the final tally from May 4th, keeping in mind there's still one seat pending re-election. The BJP is sitting comfortably at 207 seats, which is almost 46% of the mandate, while the TMC holds 80. This is the official outcome, right? This is what triggered the immediate shift in the state cabinet, and it's the reality on paper that dictates who actually holds the reins of government today. But keep these exact numbers in the back of your mind, because there's an explosive controversy hiding just beneath this final tally.
Moving right along to Section 2, the missing voter dispute.
Now we've got to pivot to Delhi. In 31 absolutely critical seats, the Trainable Congress is pointing out something massive regarding the Special Intensive Revision, or the SIR. This is where our standard post-election recap turns into an unprecedented legal challenge. The TMC claims that the BJP's winning margin in these 31 seats is statistically less than the number of voters who were deleted from the rolls in targeted areas. They brought this directly before a Supreme Court bench with Chief Justice Surya Kant and Justice Joy Mallya Bagchi. Their argument? That these concentrated voter deletions directly altered the final results.
And that brings us to this staggering number. 35 lock. There are currently 35 lock appeals regarding these deletions pending in the apex court right now. Just let the sheer gravity of that sink in for a second. We're talking about 3.5 million contested voters. That's 3.5 million citizens whose fundamental right to participate in democracy is just stuck in judicial limbo. This isn't some minor administrative typo, it is a structural anomaly on a completely monumental scale.
Check out this contrast, because the math is mind-blowing. The total statewide vote gap between the two major parties, it's roughly 32 lakhs. But those pending appeals, they sit at a whopping 35 lakhs. The TMC's legal team hammered this point home. Mathematically speaking, the unresolved pool of potentially disenfranchised voters is actually larger than the entire margin of victory itself. It really makes you wonder, how definitive can a mandate even be when the margin of error literally exceeds the margin of victory?
To put that into perspective, senior advocate Kalyan Bandyopadhyay gave this stark, very humanizing example to the court. Imagine being a candidate and losing an election by just 862 votes in a constituency where over 5,400 people were abruptly removed from the rolls. When the number of removed voters is more than 6 times the margin of defeat, well, it's pretty easy to see why the Supreme Court noted that this matter absolutely demands deep judicial examination.
And, well, it gets more complicated. The Supreme Court has warned of a severe, multi-year backlog, which definitely wasn't helped by the recent resignation of ex-High Court Chief Justice T.S. Sivaganam from the appellate tribunal. Senior advocate Menaka Guruswamy pointed out that at the current rate, clearing all these appeals could take at least 4 years. The Chief Justice wants them decided quickly, for sure, but the ticking clock is undeniable. I mean, facing a 4-year legal backlog against a 5-year electoral term, the stakes are astronomically high.
All right, that leads us into Section 3, Transitioning State Power.
So, while all this intense legal drama is brewing in Delhi, the actual state machinery down in Bengal couldn't just hit pause. We saw this really fascinating 3-phase administrative transition under Article 324. Phase 1 saw executive control shift smoothly from the Mamata government over to the Election Commission during the Model Code of Conduct. Then, Phase 2 meant strict ECI oversight and totally neutral administration at the counting centers. Finally, in Phase 3, control officially snapped back to the state cabinet on May 9th, putting the newly formed Suvendu government in charge. It's a crucial process for keeping things stable when political tensions are literally off the charts.
Looking at the actual mechanics of this handover, you really see the incredible resilience of the bureaucracy. On May 9th, IAS and IPS officers officially shifted out of their temporary election duty mode straight back into official state service under the new cabinet. The state apparatus just smoothly transfers its daily operations and loyalty to the new executive branch. And they do all of this completely regardless of the fact that 35 lakh appeals are simultaneously pending in the highest court in the land.
Next up is Section 4, the first cabinet moves. Man, the new Suvendu government did not waste a single second waiting for the dust to settle. Their very first cabinet meeting laid out these massive, sweeping structural pivots. We're talking a 5-year age limit extension for government job applicants, a statewide rollout of the Ayushman Bharat healthcare scheme, and officially adopting the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita. They even set a strict 45-day deadline for border fencing land transfers. These aren't tweaks. They are designed to have rapid, highly visible systemic impacts from day one.
Actually, that security pivot might be the most striking move geopolitically. By rapidly clearing land to fence the 2,216-kilometer Bangladesh border, the new cabinet is effectively ending the previous government's 5-year resistance to BSF expansion. It's a zero-tolerance policy on cross-border crimes now, drastically shifting the state's long-standing relationship with federal security forces. It is a massive, massive shift in strategic priorities.
Which brings us to Section 5, the opposition's response.
So with all these rapid, foundational changes happening, how is the opposition reacting? You'd think they might team up against a newly dominant power, right? Well, not quite. Despite some calls for a joint platform, the left and national parties are heavily resisting unity. The CPIM offered this distinctly sarcastic refusal, basically calling the TMC the original ally of the BJP in Bengal. And Congress? They're keeping their distance too, focusing on a narrative of misrule by both the BJP and the TMC. Right now, it seems for the opposition, political survival means standing entirely alone rather than standing together.
Finally, let's look at Section 6, Bengal's uncertain future.
Because as much as the new government is making highly visible structural moves, this massive question is still hanging over everything. Will the Supreme Court actually order repolls in those 31 disputed seats? The Election Commission is insisting that the proper route is filing standard election petitions. But the Supreme Court? They've agreed to uniquely examine the matter if a proper interlocutory application is filed. Justice Bakshi explicitly said they'd look into it and pass orders, even asking for a timeline report on the appeals. This looming possibility of targeted repolls adds this incredibly intense layer of uncertainty to the immediate future.
Democracy is not just about the count, it's about the trust in the process. I want to leave you with that profound thought to chew on. Because think about it. What happens to the future of governance when the administrative mechanics are moving so much faster than the legal resolutions? If those 3.5 million appeals truly do take 4 years to resolve, the current cabinet is going to be nearly done with its entire term before the foundational bedrock of its mandate is even fully verified. It really challenges us to think about how a democracy balances efficient, forward-moving governance with absolute electoral certainty. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and definitely keep questioning how these complex systems really work. Catch you next time.